Today I want to talk to you about tokusatsus in Japan. Tokusatsu is a term from Japan. It originally referred to the special effect technique of photography. In the beginning, people used props and photographic techniques to capture things that were not possible in reality. Special effects were almost born with cinema and could take us to the moon. It can take us to see dinosaurs come back from the dead. And of course King Kong climbing the Empire State Building for the love of his life. This is all special effect to achieve. And in order to bring the monster to life on screen, people started to dress up in costumes to play the monster. Tokusatsu, on the other hand, are not films made with special effects, but a series of films and television series developed from them, a genre in Japan. In 1939, the Japanese government enacted a film law to propagate their militarism, and any film published was subject to military censorship. Most Japanese films became associated with war. Just 2 years later, in 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. To publicize this victory the Japanese made the war at sea from Hawaii to Malaya. As a propaganda film, the real surprise is the final sequence of the air raid on Pearl Harbor, so realistic that the US believes it to be footage taken during the Japanese air raid. The man who created this masterpiece is Tsuburaya Eiji. In 1954, a Japanese fishing boat passing by Bikini Island was affected by the US nuclear tests. That same year, Godzilla was born. Godzilla is also the work of Tsuburaya Eiji. The story tells of the nuclear test that awakens an ancient monster and the monster's eventual destruction of Tokyo. After the release of Godzilla, a monster craze was created in Japan. It also defined tokusatsu, a movie or TV series in which people dressed up in leather suits to play monsters or heroes, using elaborate miniature models to simulate real scenes. In the years following the Godzilla explosion, a variety of monster movies were made. Tsuburaya Eiji set up a separate production company in order to produce what he wanted. In 1966, Ultraman was born. And on television, it helped humans defeat all kinds of monsters and aliens. The emergence of Ultraman was a landmark in the history of tokusatsu and it ushered in the Age of Heroes. In the TV series Ultraman is more like a god, leading people out of trouble. And at the end of the series, Ultraman is defeated by the monsters while the humans destroy the monsters by their own power. As the length became longer, Tsuburaya Eiji added a lot of his own views in Ultraman. And in Ultraman's sequel, Ultra 7, he discusses more deeply the persecution of the invaders against the Aborigines, the crisis of the Cold War and his thoughts on human nature. In a time when there were no computer effects, the advent of tokusatsu gave people a shock. In reality, Japan was the aggressor and lost the war. But in the tokusatsu they are always on the invaded side and the heroes help them resist the invaders. The Cold War was in full swing and the international environment was full of suspicion, with nations and people no longer trusting each other. The apocalyptic scenes in tokusatsus stimulated the viewers' pent-up nerves. Tokusatsu became an outlet for people's emotions. The directors were able to use them as a way of satirizing the aberrant society. As Japan developed, tokusatsu genre became more about the future and the desire for a better life. The genre became more and more diverse, with the introduction of equivalents, robots and so on. 1971 saw the introduction of the Kamen Rider and 1975 saw the introduction of Super Sentai. And new faces such as Gamera appeared in Monster Movie. There were more and more special features, robots, aliens, ninjas and so on. Tokusatsus also became more realistic looking, with the Gamera trilogy and the Ultraman trilogy in Japan during the Heisei years. Each represented the pinnacle of tokusatsu and feature TV series. The Gamera trilogy's images even rivaled the computer effects of today. However, as times changed, computer effects continued to develop and become more realistic, leaving tokusatsu on the way out. Tokusatsu has become less competitive in the adult market. The profitability of tokusatsu simply depends on selling peripheral toys, and the main purchasers of toys tend to be children, which has led the big companies to start abandoning the adult market. To cater to children, Godzilla went from representing the embodiment of nuclear destruction to being a companion for children to protect the Earth. And the gradual dumbing down of the storylines of tokusatsus made them even less appealing to adults, and a vicious circle has been set in motion ever since. Even Tsuburaya lost their autonomy when they were bought out by the Japanese toy company after the failure of the film Ultraman the Next, which they had put all their efforts into making. Tokusatsu are like a microcosm of Japan as a whole. It boomed as Japan boomed and declined as Japan declined. Computer effects are now so sophisticated that they create images far more realistic than those of Tokusatsu. Godzilla, which had been dormant in Japan for years, has been revived in Hollywood films. Instead of putting on a holster, actors are able to play the monster with vivid expressions through motion capture. But the Tokusatsu didn't disappear. In 2016, Hideaki Anno directed Shin Godzilla that combined cinematic effects and Tokusatsu. That same year, Tsuburaya officially produced an all-CG Ultraman short, and the new Ultraman, due for release in 2021, will also be made in CG. Tsuburaya also partnered with Netflix to animatize Tokusatsu. The release of Ultraman, and SSSS Gridman. As the pioneer of Tokusatsu, Tsuburaya is actively seeking change. But it doesn't help but bring up a question. Like Ship of Theseus, is a Tokusatsu without Tokusatsu a Tokusatsu? Or is it something else with the name of Tokusatsu? But what is undeniable is that Tokusatsu has evolved over the years from a technique, a genre to a cultural symbol. It has had a profound impact on Japan itself and the world. Some Hollywood films such as Alien and Planet of the Apes use a lot of special effects. The Americans began remaking Super Sentai, and Tsuburaya launched new Ultraman productions set in Australia and the US. Tokusatsu Voltus V became the spark for the people power revolution in the Philippines. The director of Pacific Rim made a point of thanking Tokusatsu for inspiring him in the end credits. From monsters to heroes and back to monsters. The story of the Tokusatsu will be told forevermore.